Whakalofalahi atu kia mutolu osi whakawe ke he takitaki mafola. He hatalu iki kua muua e aho nei. Koe hingoa haku ko Erin, hauau he motu ko Amerika. Koa koe tangata kumikumi, nofo aui o kalana. Whakawe lahi, welcome everyone. And thank you so much for being here today. And by here, of course, I do mean in the Zoom call or on Facebook Live, but also wherever you are beyond the screen. So a lot of our conversation today will be around land. So before we get into specifics, I'd like to ground our thinking a little bit in reminding us that every piece of land is indigenous. So every piece of land belongs to somebody, knows their name and their ancestors' names. So I encourage everyone at this event today to sit with that and think about where here is for you beyond the screen. So you may be here on your ancestral lands, but many of us might be coming to the land we're on from somewhere else. Some of us are indigenous to other lands. Some of us were brought to this land by force. Some of us are refugees or immigrants. Some of us are settlers. And some of us are more complicated than these categories allow, right? So any conversation about climate justice must involve talk of decolonization, right? And our discussion about how we repair and restore our relationships with the environment and with each other. Indigenous peoples around the world have been leading the way in demonstrating not only stewardship and protection of the land, air, and sea, but also how to navigate the complexities of climate action and, when necessary, adaptation. So that being said, I'm joining today from Tamaki Makaurau, Aotearoa, also known as Auckland, New Zealand, where the tangata whenua, or people of the land, are Ngāti Whātua o Orake. My name is Erin Thomas, and I'm the Policy and Research Coordinator at ICAD. Today, we're hosting this incredible group of climate justice advocates, researchers, and community leaders. And my role will be doing a bit in the way of framing the discussion and managing our Q&A. So before we get started, I'll just share a bit of housekeeping. We have a few requests in order for us all to enjoy this event. If you are not a speaker on the Zoom call, please do keep yourself on mute. We have live closed captioning on the bottom bar of the Zoom call, and it should also be functioning on the Facebook Live as well. The recording will also be posted on YouTube, where captioning will also be available. So by way of an agenda, I will be introducing our keynote speaker in a few minutes, who will kick off our introduction. Then after Jamal's remarks, each of our panelists will share for about 10 minutes each. Then in about an hour, we'll open the floor for a Q&A. You're welcome to ask questions at any time via the Zoom chat or on Facebook Live, and we'll get to them during that Q&A time. Now, if you'd like to loop in others to the event who haven't yet registered for the NGO CSW virtual platform, no worries. In the chat, you'll see the Facebook Live link that you can share. And that will also feature the recording when the event is over. Now, to start off our framing a little bit, I'll just share a little bit about our organization, ICAD, the International Center for Advocates Against Discrimination. So at ICAD, we work at the intersection of legal innovation and human-centered design to identify and fix the root causes of oppression and discrimination within systems around the world. So we use high impact strategic litigation, data collection and analysis, and international law to combat both structural discrimination and to protect vulnerable communities. Now, when it comes to our topic of discussion today, climate-induced relocation, mobility justice has really been at the core of our anti-discrimination work since our founding, and has only accelerated as a result of the climate crisis. Our current climate justice work is centered around the expansion of the right to life with dignity, to ensure that those who are displaced by climate change and environmental degradation are protected. So we brought together in this project a multidisciplinary team from the law, climate science, technology, and social sciences to draft a new legal standard for climate migration. This is grounded in the principle of the right to life with dignity, which is a lofty ideal that comes back to the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The drafters decided that the concept of dignity mattered and would be the spirit of the law. And for the climate crisis, this has huge implications. If states have an obligation to uphold the right to life with dignity, then there's no excuse for climate inaction or the lack of protections for those forced to relocate. Now, to break down some of the remaining barriers, our team's working legal standard substantiates the argument around the state's obligation to preserve this right to life with dignity. In practice, this will do three major things. We can pave a pathway for the protections of climate migrants at the international level. We can provide a framework for internally displaced people that prioritizes human rights. And we can guide host countries on resettlement strategies that center the dignity of every person. Now, the reason for this event today is that projects like the one Jamal will be sharing about are already developing using a similar approach, building in equity and centering the right to life with dignity and relocation planning. And further to that, this project is also employing a feminist approach. And when we talk about gender equality and women's role in decision-making, the conversation can sometimes feel like having women at the table is enough. But what a feminist approach tells us is that while representation is crucial, we must also maintain an approach that centers the care and well-being of our communities, particularly those marginalized by hierarchical structures. So while we will be talking about women's roles and leadership and decision-making, we're also talking about how everyone, regardless of gender, can employ a feminist approach in their leadership, especially when it comes to leading communities in something as big as climate change-induced relocation. So we're really talking about a feminist approach to climate change-induced relocation, and I'm thrilled for you all to be able to hear from these incredible climate justice advocates on such an important topic. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Jamal Talangi Veidreyaki is the General Manager and Projects Coordinator at the Niue Organic Farmers Association. She's a researcher at the University of Auckland and is actually working with our other speaker, Dr. Newport, on a project on mental health and climate change in the Pacific. She's also a national development consultant, and before that, she's held various leadership roles in the community and government. I met Jamal a few years ago during our research project on gender-based violence in Niue, and have been truly inspired by her work on land tenure and community development. Jamal is the lead climate justice advocate working to develop an equitable national internal relocation framework in Niue. And her determination and passion for her community is not only admirable, but also gives me the utmost confidence that she will make it happen. We are thrilled to have you here. And with that, the floor is all yours, Jamal. Jamal, you'll actually need to click the mute. I've accidentally muted you. Perfect.
Thank you, Erin, for that kind introduction. I just wanted to acknowledge Erin for all the work that she's done to make this platform happen. And watching live from Facebook. We're happy to have you here with us. Thank you, ICAD, for the partnership, as well as to my fellow panelists. Here with me this morning in the Cook Islands, Dr. Christina Newport, Rupina Morrissey, and Robin Hekau. Thank you for taking the time to do this panel with me this morning at such short notice. As you'll know, here in the islands, we have many hats. We do what we can to keep our communities and our islands going. So just to give a bit of context about myself and Niue, I was born and raised here in Niue, and I'm very grateful for that. And I've spent a few years abroad in Fiji and New Zealand studying at the University of the South Pacific, in Suva, and recently at Auckland University. Niueans are New Zealand citizens, and our population on island at the moment 1,700, about 30,000 Niueans abroad, mostly in Auckland, New Zealand. Niue is governed by a democratic system, self-governed since 1974, with special relations with New Zealand since 1901. There are 14 villages on the island, and each have a representative in parliament. We also have 6 common role members, a total of 20 members that govern Niue. Each village has their own local councils, and they govern local community matters. So Niue is a raised coral atoll, about 160 9 square kilometers, and our highest point is about 70 meters at the northernmost point at Mutalo village. There are 2 terraces, the lower terrace where most village communities reside, and is closest to the sea, and the upper terrace about 2 kilometers up above from the lower terraces where most agricultural activities take place. So in line with our overall theme of today's session, women in decision-making processes. So from Niue, growing up in Niue, I never really felt the indifference when it comes to the involvement of women in decision-making processes. As a child growing up, attending village meetings, women, I always see that women are vocal and expressive in their thoughts and in their concerns, and all these are taken into consideration. However, when it comes to leadership roles in the community and in government, this has always been dominated by the men. So where culture and tradition comes to play in the strong respect for men, husbands, to take on these roles, this was the norm. And the women to take on family responsibilities such as taking care of the children. But it doesn't mean that women don't have a voice. They have very strong influence in the dynamics of decision-making process, because these discussions begin at the home before it comes into the community. So we always, joke around that the men listen to their wives. So, these spaces today, the leadership roles are very much challenged by the women, and we're happy to see more women in politics, women in village council roles, such as Rupina, such as in my own community, a young woman who's juggling a young family, a government job, and taking on village council roles. So these are some of the challenges we face as women in leadership roles. So just taking us back to just my experience working here in Niue, as beautiful our islands may be, I had many frustrations in the systems and in place and how society functioned, not only in Niue but across the Pacific at large. And these systems have been set during the colonial period, and not much has really changed since then. So in 2011, I was working for the former premier, the late Talangi, and at the time, that's when I realized the vulnerabilities that Niue faced from climate change, high dependence on foreign aid, and things like that. So although government is relentless in trying to find a way to change the dynamics of our reality, there's an impenetrable patriarchal system that is not well understood, a system embedded and entrenched in the fabric of our societies here, not only in Niue, but across the Pacific, that requires more research to understand the impacts on development. So research on its own, there's not enough research done by our own people for our countries. And so these frustrations or these issues led me back to university. And I felt, however, in the past 5 years while being in New Zealand at Auckland University, I felt that society has somewhat transformed quite quickly in the last 5 years, particularly in New Zealand. We heard from a new government led by a woman, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern. We heard a different voice from her. We had a different feeling when she emphasized on kindness and empathy. So she said, and I quote in one of her many speeches, that a good leader is someone who's able to calm the people's anxieties. And those words stuck with me while I was there, because there is so much anxiety in the world, even before the pandemic, and her words came at the right time. So coming back to my research focus was on Niue, climate change, conflict, and development. specifically climate change-induced relocation in the context of Niue's land tenure system. In 2004, Niue was hit by a Category 5 cyclone with wind speed up to about 385 kilometers per hour and generated tsunami-sized waves estimated at about 60 meters high. The entire west coast of the island from Awasele to Talagi was heavily impacted. Government infrastructure, homes, roads, and in my community, our church, the biggest building in the village, was completely flattened. So the trauma felt by the people then still lives with us today. Across the Pacific region, we have seen in the past 17 years more and more Category 5 cyclones. There's trauma, there's devastation, and feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. Straight after the cyclone in 2005, a couple of communities on the island discussed plans for community relocation. So that was Abufi and Makifu. And by 2008, the government facilitated about 20 Tahitian government-funded prefab homes to be allocated to families who lost their homes and who were at high risk because their homes were located right on the cliff edge on the coast. So these were built on the upper terrace of the island, most of which were allocated to Abufi and Tuapa because of the existing infrastructure of power and water up on the upper terrace in those communities. For Makifu's plan, it didn't go ahead. There was also no national efforts at the time for community relocation to be supported. The government, on the other hand, has been successful in the past 17 years in relocating government infrastructure, mainly because of to the upper terrace. So mainly this is because of the resources that they have to access funding. So they've managed to relocate the main hospital, the public service building, the Niue primary school, the Niue police station, the museum, and recently the government parliament house. So in comparison to the communities, the government has access to crown land that's available to them, and which makes the process much more easier. For the communities, on the other hand, the infrastructure is not in place, and that's the access roads, the power and the water. And the land ownership is still customary owned, so owned by the individual. So I wanted to evaluate the decision-making process since 2005 to identify those challenges faced by the community that stop plans to relocate homes to the upper tiers. So these are quite sensitive challenges and requires further research to help to address these issues carefully and in the most positive way possible going forward. Because in 17 years of misunderstanding of each other, these things have morphed into complicated, ongoing differences that really doesn't have good outcomes. So, and also in the past 17 years, the problem is still there. The anxiety of coastal dwellers they face is getting worse every year. And then the need to relocate is becoming more and more urgent. However, there is still no specific community plans in country to make this happen. Because one, relocation is costly, and two, identifying land to build can result in conflict within family units. So there's no access to landlocked areas. So these are access roads to the upper terrace, and there's no infrastructure, power and water, like I mentioned before. We have solar power, the alternative of the solar power, renewable energy, and surface water tanks. But these should be set up as an alternative and not to be depended on completely by the families. So these are some of the major hurdles that we need to overcome at a community level and at a national level. Because the act of relocating one's home to another location was and is still very not very well understood, especially by community leaders to handle these kind of situations, because they're not specialized in things like counseling, for example. It is relocation is a very sensitive topic that has stemmed from a very traumatic experience, which brings about a mixture of heightened emotions by different people, anxieties, and about how relocation is going to take place, or who's going to help cover these costs. So I found that a lot of these things build up resentment as well in the past as to who's supporting the families or the communities to carry out such relocation plans. There was not much support, maybe from the leaders or the government, and emotional support, counseling. I find that it's critical in the decision-making processes to enable the relocation to succeed, because people react differently to trauma or feelings of indifference, because some can relocate, some can't, and that is just the reality of the situation globally. But if there's no plan, then there's no standard to follow, and people who can move will move, however they see fit. But those who can't, they face more risk to the impacts of severe tropical cyclones on the island. So since 2004, a handful of families have relocated their homes to the upper terrace. And I believe that it's these families that experience firsthand the impacts of 2004 Cyclone Hekau. Going through that fear of losing your family because your home is underwater, or in waves crashing on the land, and you're feeling trapped and hopeless. You can't really do anything or escape anywhere. So I was 17 years old that time. I'm 35 years old now, and waves were crashing around our house, and I watched my family go through the horror, and it was heartbreaking. I never really was a religious person back then, but I was very fearful, and I knelt down in my bathroom floor, and I prayed everything I had for us to be saved. So because I saw the waves, I thought that was it for us, and we're just waiting for the winds to either blow off the house roof, and then we're exposed to high winds and flying debris, or a big huge wave was going to take the house. So the research on climate change, induced relocation exists. There's a lot that's been done out there. There's extensive work done internationally and in the region, led by the UN International Organization for Migration. And this is mandated by world leaders, outlined in the Paris Agreement in 2015. However, in Niue's case, we're not present in this space at the moment, particularly for community relocation. So we shouldn't be, well, I think we shouldn't be looking at Niue and saying that we're less vulnerable than our Pacific neighbors, just because we're a little bit raised. We're extremely vulnerable. Our issues are similar, but they're not the same. Our population is very vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. We lose one person in our community, and that's a big impact on us. So relocation increases resilience, and it also reduces disaster risk to lives. So as a way forward for this project, I came back last year, and I started some consultation work with village councillors. Some of the village councillors, some members of parliament, some pastors and government officials, and all have been very supportive of this initiative because it's already been discussed. Each community had their own discussions about relocation, but we just need to come together and make that a national framework of some sort. And they've identified roads, access roads, they identified infrastructure, power and water, and this would entice people to carry out their own relocation plans to their own lands. But these things need to be planned out at a national level, and seeking, and also to seek out outside funding to assist, because this is a global responsibility. So it's crucial that community cohesion is crucial in this, to drive this this initiative, where everyone's on the same page, particularly to lobby national level frameworks such as this. So I will stop there, and if you have any questions, Erin is monitoring the questions for us for after, and I'll pass it on to my other panelists to continue. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamal, not only for sharing your personal story and your personal experience with something that can feel a bit intangible to some of us who don't have that lived experience. So really appreciate that, as well as obviously your leadership, both in your community throughout Niue and now around the world. You have an audience that's been able to hear about what you've been able to do. So really appreciate that. And for audience members, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat, and we will get to those in the Q&A. But now I would love to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Christina Newport. Tina lives in Rarotonga in the Cook Islands, and as a postdoctoral research fellow in Pacific Studies at the University of Auckland, she's working on the same project, investigating climate change impacts on Pacific people's mental health and well-being. Her other roles include working as the Cook Islands Climate Change and Migration Specialist for the International Organization for Migration's Pacific Climate Change, Migration, and Human Security Program. Over to you, Tina.
Whakamawhalahi atu, kia motulo oti, whakamawhalahi atu kia koea Erin, kia kuto Erin, Jamal, Robin, and Rupina, and kia ora ana koutou katoa to our guests that are joining us online today. Koaio, ko Tina. I am from 3 islands in the Cook Islands, Rarotonga, Mangaia, and Aitutaki, which is in the southern group. And as a descendant of Tamakio, I live on the tribal land, on my tribal land in Waimanga, a sub-district of the village of Titikavika, on the south coast of Rarotonga, and that is about 1,000 kilometers to the east of Niue. So I see you, Jamal, and the people of Niue, and we are connected by our deep, beautiful, powerful, and forever moving ocean, Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. And I'm honoured and humbled to be able to come here today, to be able to support you and the work of your community, of your country, in addressing the internal displacement and planned relocation that is upon Niue due to the impacts of climate change. For many of us that live in island places like Niue, like the Cook Islands, our greenhouse gas contribution to global emission levels and the climate change crisis are minuscule. Yet as people who live on small areas of land in a vast ocean context, already dealing with economic, social, environmental, cultural challenges, we are now having to address the additional effects of climate change. And these are effects that are not of our making, but are certainly effects that, as global citizens, we stand up to and are prepared to be counted in addressing, the global challenge of climate change presents. I want to share a chant with you. Te eke anga vai me a vai ki nui. E vai renga, e vai kura, puta mai e ki te ao, e tangata. The waters which flowed from a Viking Nui, our ancestral spiritual homeland, sacred yellow waters, sacred red waters, it brought forth into the world life, it brought forward people. This pe'e or chant refers to the sacredness of our water. From water comes life, from women, the fluids of birth that surround and deliver a child brings forward life. From women flows the waters of our ancestral spiritual homeland, waters that deliver us to our lands, our villages, and our islands. So when we are asked to consider moving away from our homes, our lands, our inua, it is a deeply profound request we are making. We can understand and we can articulate what a move would entail, whether we are moving inland, upland, across land. We know that we will need access to water, to power, our livelihoods, schools, our plantations. We need suitable, affordable housing. We still need to be able to access our coastlines, our food sources, our fishing grounds. We also need to be able to access our workplaces and churches. We need to be able to access our sacred spaces and places, our burial grounds, our areas where we gather our medicines and perform rituals. We also need to be able to access community gathering spaces for fun, for recreation, and for debating village concerns. So when we consider relocating households or an entire village, it is, as Jamal said, a sensitive and all-encompassing endeavour. For many, relocation is a measure of absolute last resort, and contemplating such a move for some cannot be comprehended. Some prefer, will, and do put their efforts into adapting to their current location, raising their homes on stilts, building barriers to protect them against, rises in sea level, king tides, and flooding. For them, adapting to physical constraints is endured over having to experience the anxiety, the grief, and trauma of climate-induced relocation, of having to move. It is important that we understand our mobilities as well as our immobilities. Our tradition shows us that we are highly mobile people. As voyages on our ocean was our highway, we commuted between islands, and in our daily lives, we continue to move about our islands for various purposes. We move seasonally to different locations for planting, fishing, or festivities. We also stay put for different purposes, such as protecting our land rights through occupation and planting. It is important that we understand not just what a planned relocation by government policy means, but the context of our movements as a society, as a community, and the different perspectives within our communities. Research points to the concept of trapped populations, where communities, in particular groups of communities situated in harm's way, are without the means and the capacity to move. Typically our women, our children, our elderly, our people with disabilities. However, this is a notion that needs to be considered with caution in our own context, because we know as protectors of community cohesion and keeping our relationships strong in our villages, that some of us move so others may stay, such as workers relocating for work and remitting home. We have those who choose, and we have those who choose to stay. I mean, I recall in 2005 during Cyclone Mina, that came through the Cook Gardens, the papa next door refused to leave his home as the water was lapping around the house, but stay he did and move he did not. Needless to say, he remained safe. But these are the choices and the decisions that people make in the face of those kind of hazards and risks. In considering our role as women, and despite the structural barriers that inhibit our participation in decision making, I think that we are well placed to bring our voices and the voices of those in our communities that we represent into this climate change migration policy spaces and bring those into the debates. This means being involved in those formal and informal processes of decision making at government and community levels. There is no one pathway in which we can participate, advocate, and bring attention to the perspectives that we hold and share. It also involves creating opportunities for dialogue, such as this event, and speaking into the listening of our online participants and seeking that support and alliance and advocacy through your networks is an important aspect of events such as this. But most importantly, our participation is about being involved in controlling the narratives of our experiences and generating the content that is inputted into those deliberations and the decisions that speak to our rights to life with dignity. So on that note, I want to finish there and just say Hakao he haka no mai mei takimata e kia manui.
Thank you so much, Tina. I think that really sort of expanded our conversation to think deeper about what relocation means. And I wrote down, I loved what you said about controlling the narratives of our experiences, because so often, you know, when we talk about retelling stories and bringing stories to policy space, sometimes those narratives change. And that's exactly where we need community leadership and leadership from women to really make sure that they are true to lived reality. Thank you so much, Tina. So we'll now move on to our next speaker, Rupina Morrissey. Rupina is the Vice President of the National Council of Women in Niue and is the chair of the Alofi North Village Council. Over to you, Rupina, and someone will need to click the unmute button on that side. Yeah, so Jamal, you guys are muted at the moment. So someone could come up to the laptop and unmute. That would be great. Thank you.
Sorry about that. We don't have a tech person on here.
So she's going to start, Erin.
Thank you for this opportunity to be able to make some comments regarding climate change. As Maya said, we in the community, it's a small community, so we all wear lots of hats. And being part of the chair of the Alofi North Village Council, I'm also with the women and also as a land commissioner. and recently on the liquor board. These positions actually have given me probably an advantage in knowing what is happening in my island. But talking about climate change, on January the 5th, in 2004, there was Cyclone Hekau. It was a category 5, and it devastated the coastline of our island. Alofi was probably the worst hit, and a lot of the people lost their homes and their businesses. We lost a hospital that had been newly renovated, and before it had been built, there was murmurs of having it moved inland, but it wasn't. We lost our museum and lots of treasures. And we lost a young family. That was the beginning of the reality for me that people need to move inland to avoid this kind of headache. Today, there are still remnants of Cyclone Hekau to remind us of what 8-foot waves can do in a very short time. To make comments on what I think of the climate change in relation to Hekau. It's a big concern for Alofi North, our village. Before Cyclone Hekau, I had not heard of safe housing. My family lives in Alofi, the main town of Niue. And although we were further inland from the ocean, the warnings were slow and we were not prepared. Our shutters were puny and the rain came into our home. The lounge had aqua-deep rainwater and the children were really frightened. As I recall, it was selective in the areas that had hit Cyclone Hekau. Nevertheless, the damage was extensive and our coastline has not yet recovered. In the event of another category 5, it's possible that Alofi North may become segmented and separated by the waves. Going inland is the best option. The village prime concern is the event of another cyclone being able to relocate inland. A few homes have had the vision to move inland, and that area is at full. Even with the best laid plans, in the event of a cyclone, preparing ahead is a good solution. Alofi North needs to look at planning for refuge inland before there is another cyclone. It would be a major undertaking, but definitely we need to look seriously at how that can be done. The village council has already requested government for the old road in Veidreyaki, situated behind the pastor's residence in Alofi, to be cleared as an access road in the event of another disaster. The road would give us two choices of moving inland, one at Hekau and the other at Veidreyaki, which takes us to our presently designated refuge home at Niue Primary School. It could also be used as road for students to the primary school and high school. It used to be a regular footpath, but it has become overgrown and bushy from neglect. For the safety of our families, especially our disabled, our elderly, and our children, having access to a safe house and land is crucial to our future well-being. Preparing early will help us to lessen the impact that disasters bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupina. I'm recovering a little bit just from hearing that. It's so, and I hope it resonated with everyone in the audience as well, just to be able to hear firsthand what that experience is like and how you think through what next when community is the priority. So thank you, Rupina, so much for sharing that. And I'm sure that will provide some context for our questions as well, as people begin to think a little bit deeper about what climate-induced relocation is all about. So our final speaker, I am happy to introduce Robin Hekau, who is the head of National Disaster Management, the National Disaster Management Office in Niue. Over to you, Robin.
From Niue, and as the topic is on women's role in decision making, and thank the three women before me that have said everything, and two from our side have said pretty much everything. And it shows or reflects on the topic that they are very much involved in decision making, because I'm the last speaker, I am the male on this panel, and I felt like overpowered by these great speakers before me. So just a little bit on the size of Niue for those of you guys that have access to Google or knowing a little bit more. Its land-wise, we're pretty big. It's about 261.5 square kilometers, but our population-wise is very small. It's only about 1,800 people on the island, depending on how many will leave the island on holiday or people coming into the island. So from this very small population, you'll think that we'll be able or easier to carry out some of the projects or some of the funding or some of the challenges will be different in other islands with so many different islands or that we have, we still have the same challenges like with everyone. So from my other roles, I was the head of Culture Center Museum that was totally destroyed in 2005, and I changed jobs to as the head for the National Disaster Management Office in 2015. So from then, from 2004 up to 2015, that's when we were finally able to rebuild our museum more inland. But by that time, in the process of building, it took that long to have it relocated into a higher ground, into another crown land. So by that time, I had moved jobs, and moving into disaster should be able to help resolve some of the problems and some of the things that we had. So this is one of the things that we've been talking about since 2004, is trying to relocate families that are more on the coastal areas. So like more on the western side of Niue, we have 8 villages, pretty much like about 9, 8 for sure that I know that are big and classed as villages. So most of these people wanted to be relocated, but there are a few problems. So pretty much as Jamal's talk was on how government and all other government departments are being relocated to Crown land. So for the government, that's the first priority, is for government infrastructure to be relocated into higher grounds and more into the Crown lands of government, which they believe a lot of people on this coastal area are difficulties because they cannot afford to be relocated to higher grounds where customary and family lands are available. Also, I am the chairperson for our village council, Alofi South, which is the capital of Niue. And not only that, I am also faced with my job and with government trying to relocate. So for the people on our village, which is the main town, which is the main population of Niue, they will come into Alofi every day for work. Everything is centered around Alofi. So everybody spends a lot more time here in Alofi. Maybe about 80% of the population is here from Mondays to Fridays for the work and for schooling. So even with all these challenges that we face for the government and for our village and for my job, government has the first priority where the funds that they will use it for. So for example, that like as you hear from Rupina on evacuation routes, these routes has been established before my time and before it's been there in a very long time, before the villagers came to the coastal areas. They used to be up more inland, and as time went on, they came down to the coast, so they had access to the sea and access to closer to other people as well. So even these evacuation routes has been identified, should be maintained by government, but it's not being maintained by government. These are still foot tracks, and we'd like to improve them in some of these areas. So for us in this town area, we're now facing a lot of other challenges, like for power, for water, and telephone lines, because there are more big buildings now in our area and a lot more people. And now we're facing problems like power shortages or water cuts, things like that. So still, those are the challenges. And for people to move more inland, it depended if they had lands more inland, whether it's have access to these infrastructures or not, or the utilities. But like people will do their own. So with all the infrastructure, with all the power lines on Niue, from my side of work, that's one of the things after 2004 that we tried and had all the power lines and all the utilities go underground. We have now achieved that. But for private people, they wanted to, as an extension of developing their areas, you have to pay for your own services and able to take it to your places. So from the nearest power line or from underground, it can cost up anything from like about $5,000 to $100,000 plus. So people can't afford that. And government hasn't still in the process or trying to put in these infrastructures for people in our village, because we are the biggest village, but still we're facing other challenges. So with Jamal's research, she approached our office, and so we're hoping with this idea, then everybody, and with the other villages on this coastal, we're all joined together and able to push for funding or as a priority for government to establish some of the main areas where people can go to more families and different lands in those areas that they'll be able to build. So like from my experience in our community, it was so hard for them to decide to move inland because they're going to miss their neighbors. And the ones that have moved more inland, they are separated from their usual neighbors. And most of them are pretty much on their own because there's no one around. They're still in the community, but there's no more neighbors because the neighbors don't have the same family lands in those areas. So some of them refuse to move more inland. And since 2004, things have settled, and the history of the generations have grown up, and those that were born, they don't know what's like in 2004. So people don't talk much about what happened then because they don't want to be reminded. But still, we try to talk about it and pass the history on. So then the new generation should know the reasons and why their families are trying to move more inland, or other people that are already inland that have no neighbors, when they return to their old neighborhood, whether they can maintain their homes. It depends also on finances, because with any development on the coastal area, they won't get a back loan. This has been declared as a red zone. So if you wanted to develop there or maintain your homes there, it's on your own cost. But then still, the infrastructure is not being established more inland. So with other developments or other projects that the government had when planning, like for a roading project, they're trying to establish and put in these facilities. And it's the same thing with internet cable that they're trying to redigging around Niue. They were able to lay some of these utilities there as well. And even in Dr. Newport's talk on people, whether they wanted to move or not to move. And that is hard also for my job as time in our cyclone season, which is from November until April. We also faces that with a lot of people on the coastal. They prefer to stay in their own homes, and especially the elderly. And so we can't really force them, but even though they were given warnings and being encouraged to move before any major cyclone or winds heading our way. And thus far, since 2004, we've been really lucky and fortunate that we're still being blessed, that we have the calm seasons and a lot of sunshine, good weather. So even land is not an issue, an easy issue for us, because there are a lot of Niueans that are living outside of Niue. They also have a very strong voice in trying to, they also object to land issues over here, or families trying to title their lands. So that is pretty hard, but also as a land commissioner, you are able to help and then look at the needs and people here on Niue first before the ones from outside of Niue. So even with a lot of these wants or wish lists that we wanted to have on for Niue, and as for my job, it's not easy, it's pretty challenging. And for the topic here on Niue, I think the women's, they're very good at making decisions. And not only that, the other ones that will attend most of the village meetings, the workshops. There's always a high number of women in every meeting compared to men. Men prefer just to stay at home and expect their voices to be heard through the women. But in my experience with my work as government in the community, women are very strong and very vocal. That's how I see a lot of these women that are pretty vocal. And I guess also growing up with my own mother of a family of 15, she's always been a high educator. She went on to be a chairperson for the Public Service Commission, a businesswoman, into politician. So I always see women as a very strong role here on Niue. And thus far, they're doing a good job. And with all this, I hope that this will be successful, and especially for Jamal's research. There are more women doing more research here on the island than men as well. So with all that, I hope that all of you that are listening in will learn something about us here on Niue and more about our Niue women. And those of you guys that are sleeping, it's okay. So once again, for all of you,
Thank you, Robin. I don't know how anyone could sleep through that. Certainly getting a picture for the sort of very tangible challenges that are faced when we think about climate change-induced relocation planning. It's very difficult, right, to hold the complexity of land and land rights with both people living on Niue, but also, Niueans living abroad, as well as infrastructure, which is a very real challenge, right? Even once people do decide to relocate. So I think after all of these speakers, first of all, thank you all so much for such a well-rounded discussion. I think we really got the full picture here. We do have a few questions, and we have plenty of time for questions as well. So if those of you who have some burning questions that haven't been popped into the chat, either on Facebook Live or in the Zoom, please do so. But we have two to start out with, and what I'll do is just read them out, and whoever would like to respond, and we can have multiple answers to the same question, and we can even have a short discussion about it as well. So our first question is coming from a listener from the Philippines who is asking if there are any good examples of your community addressing the needs of persons with disabilities in relation to relocation. In the Philippines, they're sharing that they experience a lot of climate and human-induced disasters where persons with disabilities are affected disproportionately. So wanting to know if there are any good examples or ideas about how to deal with that.
Well, for us here on Niue, we don't have a lot of disabled people. We have very few disabled people, and I think they're well looked after by each communities. And it's also on their village plans that they're able to identify, which most of the villages don't have very many disability people. We have the elderly. So even with the elderly, it's already plans in place where there'll be, just an example is in our cyclone season. The police officers will attend or visit their homes and able to tell them and able to help move to evacuation centers if they need to. But even before the police will come, there's already families in the village or within the community that will look after their own elderly. But for the disabled, it's a very small number, and they have a group, and they're well looked after by the community. That's my experience from a bigger village.
I think from my experience in dealing with the elderly, because they can be categorized as the and the vulnerable group of people. I think for them, they move slow, so people really need to take the time and the patience to talk to them and then to explain to them what's happening and how they're going to carry out the relocating the elderly person to safety. So that was my experience dealing with my grandmother. She didn't want to move, so I had to go in the middle of the night to stay and replace overnight. And it was an eye-opener because, yeah, on the coast, you hear too much of the sea, and it's scary. And in the morning, and had to really prep her properly to, you know, talk her through it and make her feel like no one's rushing and making her feel like she's helpless. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I would agree with Robin's comments regarding the disability issue. We also have a disability association that is active, and yeah, and they have a voice in the community.
Yep, that's it from us. Maybe Tina might want to add something.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that, so in addition to what Jamal and Robin and Rupina have already said, I think it's important to consider the support that's needed for the caregivers. So in the household, who are the people that are actually looking after our people with disabilities, that they are the ones that also have the support that they need. So whether that's having opportunities for respite. So here we have, in the Cooks, we have services that have been set up that, and it's just one NGO that does that is able to offer some kind of respite. And in a day program where people are able to come away and give some relief to those that are at home. But also, what's important is that those organisations are resourced to be able, because they have the outreach, they have the day-to-day contact with our most vulnerable, our elderly, our people with disabilities, and it's finding mechanisms and support to be able to resource them to carry out those kind of services and give that support. One example is Red Cross, obviously an international, through the International Federation and countries having their own Red Cross associations or societies. They're able to deliver services and support in a formal kind of a way and to that kind of grassroots, village level, places. So I think, and so that's just using those already existing systems and freeing up the pathway to make it easier for communities to access those resources is an important part of that, so that, we're not having to spend all of our energy into preparing proposals and accessing funding when, a small amount that's readily available can go a long way in supporting families. Being able to purchase, adult-sized nappies and having the supply available in Ireland, on country, is one of those day-to-day issues that people deal with, is being able to just provide basic hygiene care for their people. And so, of course, if you're thinking of having access to water, and we're going to see this as climate change continues to make its impacts with, changes in rainfall and increase in droughts and prolonged dry spells. And of course, if we're on tank water, where we're collecting it off the roof, being able to have water tank systems installed on houses or close to homes is an important kind of something that communities and governments can do to ease the impact of those slower onset events or impacts that we see, rather than just about the impacts of cyclones and those kind of extreme weather events. So There's a range of things that we can do, I think, to support community effort in that regard.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions coming through. Here's a softball for our panel. Does Niue have any bilateral agreements with other countries for international migration or visas due to climate and environmental situations? Though most people do not want to move and may fear loss of sovereignty, agency, or identity, are there any long-term plans for international relocation?
At the moment, we don't have anything in place really, but I think I'll pass it on to our national representative to answer. But we are New Zealand citizens and we have access to New Zealand. But in terms of agreements, based on climate change, no, we don't have as such yet.
I think for migration, we don't really have anything in place because we're always point of entry or exit is only through New Zealand. Because we are New Zealand citizens, so we're pretty much like in the Cook Islands. We have free access going over to New Zealand. But we do have some agreement with some of the other islands that are facing like king tides or the land's going under, like for Tuvalu. So we have a Tuvalu community here that was based on that, was some agreement and relocation for them. And they're able to come here to Niue because of one of the villages that at the time that we had went down to only like about 5 people in the village. And yet they have a lot of open homes, houses that was available. So with this community now, it's one of the thriving communities from Tuvalu that have moved here to Niue. So now this village is about over 100 or 200 people. So there's that they were able to come. And not only that, because of our small population and not very many people to work, our government has allowed people to come in the past. And then they were only here for a couple of years and get their permanent residency. They're able to apply for New Zealand passport, or when they get their at the time. So they now, those things have changed a little bit, but with anything else we relocated to other places, I think because Niue's population outside of Niue is over 20,000, that has just automatically been done. And then the ones that are living here on Niue are the ones that wanted to be here. That's why they were here, but there's still any funding on relocation of infrastructure or anything else. I think the government thus far has the top priority in moving their assets more inland.
It is of interest too that Niue is multicultural and that we have the other Pacific nationalities living in Niue, like Fiji, Tonga, the Philippines. We also have here a small community, and we did have some people come over working from Korea. So although we don't have agreements internationally, it is possible to be sponsored and to come to Niue. But that's probably another area.
and 6 months.
Tina, anything to add on that?
Yeah, just to endorse what Robin was saying around the access in and out of New Zealand. I think because of our we share the same sovereign relationship with New Zealand as realm, as part of the realm, and that the issues that we have to address is one of depopulation. So it's the same in the Cooks as it is for Niue with our small numbers, and the open access that through New Zealand we're able to, and through our own bilateral arrangements, able to bring in labour or people from other groups. It's a fascinating, the example of Tuvalu being in Niue is an important difference, I think, that Niue has with many other countries in that in relocating a community from Tuvalu. It throws up all kinds of challenges about equal access to healthcare, for example, that Tuvaluans are not automatically New Zealand citizens, and so even though they may be residing in Niue, I don't know that it's necessarily straightforward that they would be able to, for example, go to New Zealand to access health services or healthcare. So those are the kind of issues that bilateral arrangements would obviously sort out. And so the Cooks is also in the same position of looking to offer communities faced with displacement opportunities to reside in the Cooks rather than necessarily, so we are a receiving country rather than not necessarily a sending country. But these are all part of kind of those individual country-specific issues and differences that need to be understood when it comes to articulating our particular take or experience of displacement and relocation. And I think too that the move is towards establishing bilateral arrangements with receiving countries rather than looking at creating or contributing to existing international agreements on migration and, for example, the conventions or agreements around migrants and refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that leads us into another question coming from Facebook Live. We'll hop over there for a moment. But the Tuvalu example will actually be one to answer this. So what are some successful examples of internal or external relocation within the Pacific? For example, relocation that emphasizes equity, dignity, and sensitivity for those who see themselves inextricably bound to their land. So Tuvalu might be an example, but love to hear other examples of either internal or international relocation.
Oh, sorry, you kind of broke up a bit. So how am I understanding that question? Is there success stories on internal relocation in Niue?
In the broader Pacific, so either internal relocation or international relocation. What are some good examples that emphasize equity, dignity, and sensitivity?
Yeah, so Fiji, we know that there's a lot of work already done in other Pacific countries, so Fiji, Vanuatu, and I'm sure Robin would know more, but these countries already have their national plans in place for climate change-induced relocation, and like us, they face land tenure issues in Fiji. So relocating communities has always been part of the Pacific movement. So relocating people to areas where you can access food or where there's risk to when they're closer to the coastal areas. So the readings that I came across while I was doing my paper is a lot of this work is relocating is done in the past, has been done through a cultural process where the people recognize the importance of the customary owned lands and the importance of negotiating using those cultural processes in place in different countries. So for Fiji, that has always been how they went about to do relocation. But what they face with is that the new generation, not knowing the history behind the relocation, behind those relationships, they are not aware, and there's no evidence of those agreements, and so they come into conflict later in the later generations because of expanding communities, and they are competing for resources, for land to reside. And so these are some of the conflicts that they experience later in life. And the system that we have now is, we need to register your land before you build, and those are the systems that we are, having issues with. And culture is very much eroded in many of our Pacific countries, where we don't really recognize those traditional relationships. And so some of these things, some of the things that we really need to look at so that we can contribute to decision making in climate change relocation. For us in Niue, we've had some success stories in relocating from the coast to the upper terrace, and we do acknowledge that that it's not without challenges. Land and affordability. So with planning, we can have arrangements where we have the banks or the government can give us duty-free on importing solar panel units and things like that. But definitely I would emphasize cultural relationships is still very much strong in the Pacific. It's underlying, and it's still there. And I think it's important to acknowledge these cultural relationships and these customary ownership of the land.
Well, I guess on that first example I gave on the Talagi community over here, but the village that they were relocated to was also, in the history of that village, they were relocated due to some health reasons in the years before from a coastal area into this village that they were at. So government then brought them into some agreement with the people in the village at the time. The land was donated, pretty much like donated to the government for that relocation. So at the time, with like how Jamal was already talking about the cultural practices and all that, land at the time was, titling land was not a big issue, and it was easy for people to agree on and also giving it out as a good course. But then, and then also government built all these houses for this village. And so I guess that's why it's so easy for them to leave as well. But then for now, land is a big issue over here, and the private people, customary lands, when they lease it out to government, even if it's on a lease basis, it's a lot of problems or a lot of challenges. So that's one of the, I guess, because of the generation, the time, the development, it is a different dynamics from what it used to be. So people are not really looking much at the cultural or traditional practices when it comes to economics. When money is involved, things will change. So, and that's how we see it with a lot of the movements. Even with government relocating to all the crown lands here in Alofi, which is the town, and the government also had crown lands in the outer villages. So the people in our area have now asked if government have any more developments to use other crown lands outside of the main area. But it's how it is, and for business-wise, they're preferred to be here in the main area or the main town. So even with a lot of other developments that the government is looking at, like for housing, the people in our village still prefer that government shouldn't go ahead with housing here on the main area, but let our Niueans rebuild or contribute to their own villages as well, by building more buildings there and developing their villages.
Tina, do you have anything to add?
What comes to my mind is, well, how do we define success with relocation? You know, what does that actually look like? Because if we look to our history, if we, in our experience of being relocated, we think about the Bunabins and the sulfate mining of their country, of the island, and being relocated to Fiji. We think about the impact of nuclear testing and what it's done to islands in Micronesia, and people being relocated as a result of that. So looking to our history with those experience, and a generation, 2 generations down, and we can really kind of ask some different questions then about the success of relocation. Yes, people may be in that particular time and space away from harm and safety, but as generations put down their roots and establish themselves in another place, in another country, we may start to see a different picture emerge about their marginalisation within that society, within that group, within their island, or even within our own island. You know, just is there equity and the access to services and support that if they hadn't been relocated or are able to stay in their own places, would we see it, would success look different? So yes, it might be that a cost-effective way to be able to relocate and move them, but the cultural, social, ongoing implications and impacts, I think, also need to be taken into account about, you know, what success actually looks like with those kind of policy moves.
Thank you. Wow, I think that was a very deep answer to the question. Awesome. Well, we have one more question, and then we'll look to close out our discussion for today. So this last question is from our Zoom chat. It is natural coastal erosion having an impact on the need to relocate?
No, not for Niue, I would say. But I think there still needs to be some kind of research into the impacts of climate change on the coral ecosystem, the reefs, and the marine life on the coastal areas. But in terms of coastal erosion, I don't think for Niue, because we're a little bit higher, raised actually. We're most vulnerable to extreme weather events, such as tropical cyclones.
I guess I agree with Jamal for us here on Niue, because we're pretty much just a big solid rock all around the coastal area. And even though there has been some erosion on some of these big boulders or rocks or falling off the cliffs and stuff, but it's still a lot more safer because the villages are still a bit away from the coast. So we're pretty much just drawn to the cyclone weather seasons. If it's going to be high waves and winds, that will come inland. But it's not a problem for us because it's pretty solid as yet.
Yeah.
So we don't have any sandy beaches around. It's just all the rock pools. So it's so hard, to wash away these big rocks and stuff like that.
Our coastal area, I inquired about the damage from Hekau, and the reply I got was that we only had about 40% recovery. So that's quite a lot of damage to our coastal area, not so much through erosion, but through cyclones.
If I can add, I think that kind of speaks to then understanding the impact of that damage to that marine ecosystem. And, if there are sites for where we might gather food or where habitats have been destroyed, such as, the coral shelves or, on the slope of the island down to the seabed, those are kind of things that, even though we can't see it, we can understand just what those impacts are. And so even though we're talking about our humanity and our people being displaced, we also have that custodial role over our resources and over our land and our ecosystems, and making sure that those spaces are also protected. And so it's important for us to consider research that enables us to understand what's happening beneath the surface of the ocean, and even things around, the increasing temperature of the ocean and the effect that that's having through ocean acidification and the ability for corals to continue to live, which of course feeds fish, and that we then go in and take to feed ourselves. So it's all part of understanding those aspects of the impact. So and we've all been in that situation of understanding the impact of cyclones, but it's also being able to build up an understanding of how those slow onset impacts are really affecting our livelihoods and our ways of living. Thank you.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for the questions and the rich answers, and I'm glad we had such an extended period to have our Q&A, because I really think we got a lot deeper with this topic there. It's been an absolute honor to be hosting this panel. If anyone watching has any questions that they'd like to ask, or if they'd like to connect with anyone on the panel, you're welcome to send Jamal or I a message on the CSW virtual platform, and we'll be able to connect you with the speakers. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, you're welcome to message the ICAD page, and we'll similarly connect you with anyone you'd like to speak with. But with that, I will pass it over to Jamal for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, everybody, for being here on the Zoom. I'd like to thank the panelists for their contribution to our discussion today. Thank you, Tina, all the way from Rarotonga. I'm also Rupina and Robin, also very honored to have hosted this session, and we hope that you have taken away something useful, but we also happy that we had a chance to share with you Niue as a country and a case study for this topic. Also like to thank our audience here in the room for coming in. Have a couple of audience here and also everyone that's watching on Facebook Live. So we have covered extensively, I think, on the topic, and we hope that we'll continue our working relations with the government and also with the village councils here on the island, so that we can push and lobby for a national framework and a plan of some sort that will be able to help our communities. So we're really looking forward to good things in the future, and we work hard to support our communities here at Niue. Thank you, ICAD, Erin, for all that you've done behind the scenes to make this happen. I'm very grateful to our partnership and the research and the work that we've done. Also acknowledging my colleague Tina for from our research group from Open University, and our team there at Open University led by Dr. Jamal. With those few remarks, thank you everyone, and koe lahi from Niue, kia minea. Thank you, Erin.